everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, returning after a week off. Thank you for that. Joined by Dumelo Crossing. What's up, man?
Howdy. Yeah, now it's Dak's turn for a week off.
Yeah.
We come back at you next week for some Mapping Metroid goodness. Originally, we were going to do it this episode, but we're slightly changing things around to more accommodate everyone's schedules. So instead, we're going to be talking about some Haiku the robot.
I am excited about this one, and I can't wait to dive into it. Dak, ironically, was actually the one that suggested this game. This one wasn't on my radar, it wasn't on my list, and I'm looking forward to getting into the game. But before we get there, I want to plug a few things. Really, only one thing, I think. Actually, I was just telling Doom before we got on that over on our Patreon channel, which so many of you have graciously checked out. Of course, we've got the Great Metroid Area Ranking. We've got the Zeltcast Top 10s. But on the virtual theater side of things, we've got the Spiteri's Review. And I think, and for anybody that doesn't know, that's a show, it's a bonus show where my wife Sam and I review a movie or a series or whatever, and just, podcast about it. And I think that we recorded an all-timer, actually, over the weekend about Twilight, like the movie Twilight. I had an epiphany, actually, recording that, and I'm going to tell you this. You know what that movie reminds me of?
I wouldn't know. I haven't seen it.
Well, okay, well then this is the show for you, first and foremost, because I saw it, and I still don't know what the hell it's about. But I was watching it, and I was like, damn, this movie, there's something about it that I just like, it just throws me off. I don't quite like it. It's like weird and edgy, and the characters look all messed up, and like the shapes are strange, and I was like, this movie is Twilight Princess. It's the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess in movie form. And I was like, first, I guess that's very appropriate since they both have Twilight in their title. But second, I was like, no wonder. Like, both of them trying to be really edgy, trying to be really, like, I don't know, cutting and sharp. And, it hit me like a ton of bricks. That was my epiphany while watching Twilight. So there you go.
I don't know. Granted, I haven't seen it yet. That does seem a bit forced. I will admit, that does sound a bit forced. But I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I can't judge.
I'm telling you, man, if you go play Twilight Princess and you watch the movie Twilight, there are vibe similarities in the atmosphere that they're trying to create. I'm telling you, you heard it here first. It's there. I just wanted to throw that out.
Folks, if you happen to have played Twilight Princess and seen any of the Twilight movies, let us know in the comments right now. Is this man being for real right now?
Yeah,
this doesn't seem for real, but like I want to know.
I don't know what that Venn diagram looks like. I don't know if they quite overlap by a lot. Maybe they do. I don't know. I feel like Twilight's kind of had a little resurgence lately, or maybe I've just noticed more memes or something. But so it's another Inspired by Metroid title today, and as Doom alluded to, we are covering a little title called Haiku the Robot. And, as mentioned, this was a Dak suggestion. I think that he had it on maybe his radar. And it was on sale a couple weeks ago. So, we were like, why not? Let's pick it up and give it a spin. Doom, it's actually so I finished it a couple weeks ago. I got 100%. I think I did everything that you can do in the game. I believe that you finished it this morning. So it's going to be fresh on your mind.
I finished it about an hour ago, and I got the true ending, not the... So we'll talk about that later. I managed to get the true ending of the game, but that happened about an hour ago. And it was very fun, but exhausting, more so because of my backlog. I originally wasn't going to be on this episode because I'm like, man, I'm trying to complete like 3 or 4 more games for the end of the year. And this is another one on the pile, but I decided to do it anyways, and I'm really glad that I did, because, well, spoilers, I had a lot of fun with it.
I'll tell you what, this hasn't been the only Metroidvania I've played in the last couple weeks. I picked up the Castlevania Advance Collection, and I'm running through that. Good stuff there. But yeah, so let's talk about Haiku the Robot, and let's just tell everybody what this game is, what it's about, where it's available. So This was it was a 2022 title, so released last year. It's obviously a Metroidvania, and it was developed and published by Mr. Morris Games. So this is pretty much as indie as you can get, and it's available on looks like the Switch, looks like Windows, looks like Mac. So obviously the Switch is probably where the bulk of our audience is thinking of playing it, but yeah, it's about. I forgot to record my time at the end. I can't believe I did that, but I think I put in about 10 hours or so, and I got like 100%. So it's a nice little Metroidvania that doesn't require a ton of commitments, doesn't require a steep learning curve. I don't think. I had a pretty decent time with this game.
Yeah, my final time was somewhere in the 12-hour mark. I can't remember what the exact minutes were, but
Um, so let's just talk about this game. Let's take it from first impressions, because I have to admit. So you said you really enjoyed this title, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would put this like in the mid to lower tier of games that I've reviewed for inspired by Metroid, and I realize that sounds kind of like a knock, and I guess it is, but there was a few things about this game that didn't quite click for me like right away. So my first impression, I was like, ugh, this isn't my favorite title I've played for the series so far, which is really too bad because I hate coming on and kind of dumping on games. I think the only game that I really just didn't care for was Shadow Complex, and this is like miles and miles and miles and miles better than Shadow Complex. So I just want to throw that out there, and it gets better as it goes on, which I also just wanted to say. But my first impression, it wasn't like super great. There was a bunch of things that didn't quite click for me, and it took me a little while not to get over them, because I think that those things still hold me back on this game from being like a really, really quality Metroidvania. But I think I was just like, it took me a while to accept them. This is what they are. This is what this game is. And once I kind of like was just like, okay, this is what this game is going for. This is what it's doing. Then I was kind of able to just be like, all right, let's enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I actually think I might agree with you. Like, I enjoyed it. Maybe our criticisms are just weighted differently, but I think I think I might have an idea of what some of your criticisms are, and I think we might actually share them. But I guess for me, what it was is like, if we were to go down the definitive ranking list, I don't think there's a single thing that I would give a 5 out of 5 about this game. I don't think there's a single thing. But for some reason, when everything kind of is meshed together, it just creates a really enjoyable experience for me. And so I guess we can go into more detail as we go into each individual category. But
yeah,
like,
I was gonna say, like, I definitely agree with you. Like, there's not like one standout thing in this game where it's just like, oh yeah, that's like the super high point. But I was gonna say there's not any areas where I think there's just like a straight up one either. But like, as those words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, you know what? I do think that there might be a one or two in here, or more than one ranking in here. So yeah, let's get to it and let's see if our critiques are the same. So right away, the thing that just jumped off the page to me is the game's art style, and I understand, like, I feel like always such an artist when I'm just kind of like critiquing other people's work, because like this is an indie game development. These people do things I could never dream of doing, never dream of making like even a demo for a game, right? So like I feel bad saying it, but like the game's art style I thought was horrible, to be honest. Like, it just like, and I think as I like play more and more games, there's a fine line between like games that have like a pixely throwback aesthetic, and some of those games I think can look like really, really great. And then there's that thin line though that once you cross it, it's just like, it just looks not good to me. And I think that this game, by trying to emulate the Game Boy Color kind of graphical palette, really just like missed the mark for me. I think like there's a weird like hue over everything, right? Like, it's got like
it's very orange.
Yeah, it's got like the Sahara filter over the whole game, and it's like, I think that really hurts it, actually, because like every area starts to blend together and look the same, and functionally they're very different. But like when you have that filter over everything, it's just like, God, like this, it doesn't look good, and it really has an effect of like homogenizing everything together. So and beyond that too, like I don't think that the game's graphics, like the sprite work, anything like that, were anything to write home about, either, unfortunately. And I get it; they're going for like the Game Boy Color aesthetic, Game Boy Color style. Didn't work for me. It didn't work at all, and it actively took away for basically the time I started the game to the time that I ended it.
Yeah, right off the bat, I think I agree with that. But again, probably not as harsh as you in the same way. So I feel like this is going to be a similar theme throughout the episode. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd probably give it a 3. Like I accepted it. It was tolerable. But there's definitely like, if we see another sequel from Mr. Morris Games in the future, I would like to see a lot more effort put into, or maybe not effort is the right word, because clearly there's a lot of effort put into it.
Yeah.
But like, I'd like to see them like rework it a bit more, put some more personality and character into it, because I don't, to me, like, I'm not necessarily against like, the whole cutesy art style thing, but like you have to find some way to differentiate it from like the thousands of other pixelated cutesy art styles out there. And this game doesn't really do it that much, except for, again, that orange filter. And I think it needs a little bit more, a little bit more to make it stand out for its personality. Again, I didn't think it's ugly. I was fine with it. I accepted it, but I would like to see more in the future to like really make it pop.
Yeah, I don't think, like, I wouldn't call it ugly. Like, I know that I just said like the sprite work left a little bit to be desired, but like that's the thing, is like some of the sprite work is very good in this game. It just like, I guess the filter, for whatever reason, to me seems like it kind of takes away from what you're actually seeing, which is too bad, because it just like engulfs everything in that god awful orange filter, and it's like, okay, like a little color wouldn't hurt. But yeah, unfortunately, I just like the art style. It just didn't quite work for me. Like, I think like most of the other characters and enemies that you fight, like sprite wise, I think look pretty good. But when it, like, I think the actual robot Haiku looks about as low effort, unfortunately, as you could possibly look. Like, it kind of looks like Kirby almost.
I was about to say he just hates him because he looks like Kirby. I was waiting for it.
I want to take that back. I don't want to say low effort. It's just that the stylistic choice didn't quite work for me, and like, it just looks like it could. There's more there that could have potentially, they could have potentially done, but they didn't. Which, who am I to say? But I didn't jive with it at all, unfortunately. And there are a few areas where I do think that the game does look pretty cool. I'll give it that. Like, there's the water area towards the bottom, and also like the foresty area. Those ones I feel like broke out of the orange filter trap. And they were memorable, but like those were very, very few and far between, I thought, for me.
Mm-hmm. Kind of even going off that as well, like, especially, as a Metroid fan, one thing that, like, I'm so used to Metroid games is like the details. The details are present everywhere, whether it be the music, the art direction, just little gameplay stuff. I mean, Mercury Steam, we could probably do a whole podcast episode on all the intricate animations and interpolations that are in Metroid Dread.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Haiku, obviously it's a smaller team, so I'm not expecting something, with a fully funded Nintendo AAA title. But like, there's a lot of stuff, like even in the pause menu, like you look at the map screen and it's like a completely static map screen. There's no.
I wanted to talk about that in a bit, because let's just talk about it now. Whatever. This map absolutely stinks.
I agree.
Like,
I hate it.
I think on every single Metroidvania that we've covered for Inspired by Metroid, I'm sure at one point I've been like harping on the map and just like, I just like, if you are a Metroidvania and your whole gimmick is keeping track of the areas that you haven't got to yet, the areas that you need to backtrack to, the areas that you've got this new item now that you can progress through, you need to have a good map, and this map stinks. Everything looks the same. The areas are barely broken down. There's like very, very few markers. And granted, you do get some markers as you progress, which is great. But like those should be there. I felt like immediately for me because I was like, where is this guy again? Like where? Like, and you need to find these people. Like you don't even have a marker for save stations until like I don't know, like 2 hours into the game, and it's like, well, where the hell am I going? So the map. The map I thought was very, very cumbersome, very like the maps that I made in MS Paint on OmegaMetroid.com have like 10 times the detail of this, and I feel like such an ass right now. But like the maps were just they were no good. Like I'm looking at it right now, and like there's no legend, there's no like there's barely any area names. It's very obtuse.
So I agree with all those. That's my biggest criticism with the maps, though, is I feel like they convey the wrong information a lot of times, or they imply different information. I don't know if you used the guide at all during the walkthrough. There was 2 times where I was playing, where I had to look up online because I was lost, and it was because I thought the map was telling me something completely different than what it was actually trying to convey to me, and I was like, what? That totally like so there's one path. We'll talk about the upgrades later, but there's a path that you can bomb under to get to the Electron Creator fight. And on the map screen, it looks like that's a completely closed off path. And when the map says it's a closed off path, it means that it's a closed off path. It's not like it's not like Super Metroid where it's like a secret.
This doesn't have secret blocks, generally speaking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it was what the map was trying to show me was that was actually a bombable path, but it's like the pixel color is so close to like the edge of the map screen that I couldn't even tell the difference. And so that so I was like literally like going around like a couple hours before I finally like got a guide, and I was just like, really, that was it? But
yeah, it was very difficult to navigate. I mean, true to its inspiration. It reminded me of, I was just saying that I picked up Castlevania Advanced Collection, so I started off with Castlevania Circle of the Moon. That game was released in like the year 2000, and that map is probably on par with Haiku's map, which probably not good. Now, granted, like I said, it does get better as you go on, and you can find some markers which do help, but I don't know. I feel like maps have come a long way in Metroidvanias from the year 2000. Like a lot of this information should be there. And the thing about that too, like you were just mentioning, if you play enough Metroidvanias, typically speaking, and I play a lot, you can like kind of start to speak that Metroidvania language a little bit, right? Like you can see an area and just kind of be like, I think that I need to bomb right here, or I think that there might be a secret behind this wall or whatever, right? And that I had a hard time with that.
I was gonna say, even just looking at the map itself, like there's a conspicuous blank area surrounding here. Like I feel like there should be some sort of entrance leading here,
Yeah, so I felt like, unfortunately, I felt like the map also detracted quite a bit from my overall enjoyment of the game, because it's such a huge tool that you use to navigate the world. So when your map isn't working the way that it should, and every area looks the same, it's a recipe for trouble.
I don't want to say it gave me too trouble, except for like those couple of those couple of times where I had to look up and it confused me. Otherwise, I was able to figure out. But I do agree. Like it felt less like the map was a tool, more like I was trying to decipher the map itself.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Which I didn't quite enjoy as much. One aspect I do want to talk about in a more positive sense, and this might go more into the gameplay sense, I love the disruptor mechanic. That is such a really unique way of discovering map layouts.
I'm glad you brought that up. I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never personally played a Metroidvania that's done something like that before. I don't know if like there's one that already exists, but this is the first time I experienced it, and I thought it was really cool. It made like uncovering the map like so cool, and it felt like a significantly more rewarding experience than it usually does in games.
I think the reason for that is because like there's a reason why the map is kind of hidden from you. You know what I mean? Like usually you just go to a map station or you buy a map and it's just like, okay, here's the map. This one I thought was kind of cool because it's like, yeah, and it fits the theme of the game too, which is like, okay, they're trying to block the map. I get it. Like I like that a little bit. So it did kind of have like I think that when this game is at its best was in the moments where like you're desperately looking for that map disruptor and you're like trying to uncover the world. So I did really like that. I'm glad that you brought that up because I feel like we've kind of been dogging on the game a little bit.
It really brings out that kind of labyrinth and maze-like feel in Metroidvanias, and it does it in its own unique way, which is really cool. And kind of to clarify for our listeners that haven't played the game yet, so like basically how it usually works in a Metroidvania, obviously, you know, you go into a new area, you don't have a map. But when you check your map, you'll still have the rooms you've been in highlighted.
Yeah.
In Haiku, when you check your map, it's completely blocked off. You cannot see anything. So you have to kind of memorize your path until you find the disruptor. And once you do that, then the map opens up. And yeah, I just think that's such a cool feature, and I definitely like, if we do see a sequel, I think that's something that absolutely has to come back, because I think that's probably the highlight of the game.
I don't know if I'd say the highlight, but I think it was a strong
Maybe
point.
one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm curious to get your take on this because I don't even know where I sit on this next topic, but I wanted to talk about the game's story, and I had a thought when I was thinking about this game's story. Like, obviously, you know, these games that we review are inspired by Metroid, or maybe some of them are inspired more so by Castlevania than Metroid. This game, I felt like was directly inspired by Hollow Knight, and not really Metroid at all, in terms of the way that it told its story, in terms of all the weird characters that you could find, in terms of like a lot of different things, in terms of like the boss mechanics, in terms of, which we'll get to in a bit. I don't know that I loved the story. Maybe I should take that back. This is what I mean. I'm not quite sure how I feel. I think the concept of the story is really cool, and I like that a lot. But I felt like the way that they told the story, I was just kind of like, what the hell's going on for like 90% of the game? And I think you watched a video that kind of maybe brought you some clarity, but like I didn't really do that. So I was kind of like, okay, like there was something that happened. We've got some kind of robo-apocalypse that took place. We've got a virus in the world, like, but I felt like the game wasn't very clear in the way that it delivered the story, and there was a few of those like little, I was supposed to call them Chozo lore scans, but like, you know, there's a few little things that you can get, you know, some knowledge about the events and of the world and stuff like that. But even those, I felt like they were really far and few between. And again, it's not like there's a logbook or anything where you could go back and kind of read them in order too, which I thought didn't really help me with the story.
I would say that's probably my biggest critique, is there's a lot of text, not even just the logbook entries, but just stuff you find in the world that's like, man, I wish I could go read that back.
Yeah.
Read things together in context, you know. There's an NPC that will read you poems, and there's like a ton of poems you can read.
Did you figure out what is that poem for, by the way? I never figured out what he was supposed to be for.
I think part of it is kind of just hinting at story details. I'm not fully sure on it. I just did it for the achievement, but yeah, just like the game really needs a logbook to, like, you know, really collect everything. That being said, for what the story was, I wasn't expecting, like, you know, an amazing, like, mind-blowing story. And like for what it was worth, I enjoyed it. Basically the kind of Cliff Notes version is that, like, humans nuke themselves. Three or four scientists, before they go extinct, they transfer their minds to robots, the creators, and then the creators create Arcadia. They create a bunch of robots. Adam, who is the betrayed creator, he decides he wants to recreate humanity again. The other three creators, they don't like it, so they create a virus to corrupt him. The virus gets out of control and it corrupts everything. Haiku is kind of the balancing act to kind of restore everything. And that's basically the summary of the story.
Like I said, I put 10 hours into this game. I got 100%. I don't remember hearing the name Adam once. Like, so yeah, that just kind of goes to show, like, they need I think they needed something for you to like keep track of what the heck was actually going on. I will say, much like Hollow Knight, I did enjoy kind of the quirky cast of characters, even though like a lot of them I thought were kind of, they were one dimensional is probably being kind, but yeah, it's kind of nice. I always feel like it's kind of nice in a Metroidvania game to like see other people, and like those just like brief moments of like, wow, I'm not alone. This is kind of nice. So I did enjoy like all these guys showing up. There was I don't remember anybody's names now. I'm sorry, but like there was the one guy that kept on like giving you clues about how to end the or he was like the final weapon or something that I don't know. There's a couple different guys. Yeah, maybe. There's some people that I smiled when I saw.
The kind of ghost apparition figure.
Yeah, him. And I liked the little map guy too. That I mean, he gave you those markers too late, granted, but he did give them to you, so better late than never. So he was kind of nice. And I don't know. There's just like there's a little comfort going onto the train, like chatting with some people. So I mean, obviously this isn't enough to, I would say salvage the story in terms of what I was hoping for, but nice little moments here and there.
I think it's fun. I think I really I like the atmosphere and the implications of the story more than the story itself, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it's one of those where it's like, oh, this story creates a really interesting setting and a mood, and the story itself, it's not amazing, it's not blowing me away, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I actually think that's actually like the perfect way to put it. I think like because I mean, you know me, I'm a big sci-fi head. I'm a sucker for like a good sci-fi trope, and like by God, humanity nuking the world and like the robots taking over, like I like that. Like that's a great little story, but like so I like the setup of it. I think like the way that this game's story is actually told though is like it's not bad. It's just like I don't know. It's very there's not much to it.
It's a little too vague. Like obviously you don't want to tell the entire story up front. Like I feel like, I think we'll both agree on this. Metroid Prime 1 is kind of the perfect example of how to like just breadcrumb the story enough. It's the porridge is just right. It's not too cold, not too hot.
Yep, absolutely. And honestly, even like, I'm not expecting any game to be on the level of like Ori's story, but like that game, like that had an awesome story. Axiom Verge has this crazy story. Like there's definitely like ways that you can, tell an engaging story in a Metroidvania game. And yeah, I think the setup was better than the landing in this particular instance. And it's not like we crashed the plane. It was not. It was okay. It was okay. All right, let's just quickly touch on this because we already kind of talked about it a little bit. I thought for the most part, you mentioned that you got hung up at a couple different places. I thought for the most part, I was always moving and always kind of getting where I needed to be. There was one instance, I think towards my first 2 hours or so, where I was landlocked and I didn't have the bombs, I didn't have the morph ball, I didn't like that part. I was just like, ugh. And I eventually just kind of like powered my way through it somehow, some way. So that was the only moment where I felt like I was just like really kind of just like, what the hell do I do here? Other than that, I will say, I think that the game does a good job of giving you like a lot of different options about where you can go and like what you want to do next. You're certainly not like if you don't get the morph ball right away, like you're not going to be not able to explore a large portion of the map, right? So I do think that the game did a good job of this.
I actually really like the exploration in this game. Unfortunately, I wish the map paired better with it, but the actual exploration and the design of the layouts of the levels and whatnot, I was really satisfied with. I like how the game it gives trust to the player. It's like, hey, you know what? You know what? It's that Super Metroid road trip style of exploration that I love so much. Where the next upgrade could literally be anywhere. And there were times where I was just like, man, I don't know where to go. I'm just going to look at these random places in my maps that I haven't explored. And sure enough, random location that I would have assumed would be an expansion. Nope, that's a major upgrade that I need to progress. And I love it, man. I love it.
Yep, it was cool too because there's like I feel like also in taking from Super Metroid a little bit, like it felt to me like at the time, in every ability you eventually do need to use. Like I got a few abilities and I'm like, is this like optional? Is this like the plasma beam in Super Metroid? Like do I even need this? It's cool that I have it, but like I feel like it's just like a special little treat. So I think that the game does a good job of that as well. Just kind of getting you from not even point A to point B because I thought that it did a good job of like some games are like too open and you can go anywhere and it's just it can feel a little bit overwhelming. I felt like if you went into an area and you didn't have what you needed, you pretty much knew like right away, so you could get out of there before you get a little bit too deep or a little bit too far in to really just feel like I've wasted my time. So I thought that this game did a good job of that. And yeah, but that being said, I always thought that there was like at least a few places where I could check out too. So I thought that was another strength of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of does something similar to Super Metroid 2 where like the first hour or two, it does kind of guide you along the path. But then after you reach the factory facility, after that then it's like, "All right, training wheels are off. You go do your thing now."
Yeah.
And which is always my favorite type of Metroidvania exploration. So, again, I just really like that the game trusted me enough to get lost and get frustrated myself.
Yeah, I second that. Okay, let's talk about some of these items and abilities that you get going on here. So I thought that this was done pretty well. Pretty well. I think like all the actual expansions that you get for Haiku, I think are all like actually pretty fun. Like the bomb particularly, I thought was a blast. And like Morph Ball, you were zooming. And it's worth mentioning too, by the way, that there's like some options that you can input to like if you're speed running, you can like put those options in and they help you with that. So like every time you land, for example, you can turn on a setting where you'll just automatically go to Morph Ball mode. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. But yeah, generally speaking, I was a fan of like most of the stuff that we saw. Like when I got the what was it? The magnet that finally pulled you across like these large gaps. I thought that was so cool. You've got some classics coming back, like you've got the Morph Ball, as we mentioned. You've got the double jump, but yeah, there's a lot of like, or it wasn't a magnet that pulls you across. I'm sorry, it's like a hook shot or something like that. Whatever it was.
Yeah, the grapple hook.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the magnet is the wall jump.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of cool stuff. I thought like it was pretty fun to kind of get all these abilities, and they do have a ton of expansions, and this is the type of expansion I like, where it's not just like it's not that I don't like finding missiles and super missiles. I do, but like I've said this a million times on the show, there comes a point where you don't need them anymore, and instead what Haiku does is it gives you like different abilities. Basically you get these little chips and you can slightly alter some of your gameplay. So like and there's 3 slots too, which is kind of cool. You've got like your, I don't know, I guess you'd call it your map slot, your health slot, and your attack slot. So if you get like a blue chip, that is your typically I think it's your map, or not map, but like health or whatever. So like you can either strengthen your body, or like you can make it so like heat doesn't damage you as much, or you can detonate if you're taking damage, which was cool. Attack is exactly what you think. You add some oomph to your sword. You have these like shockwaves that spin around you, like all sorts of cool gimmicks. The map ones I thought were particularly useful actually, because the map is, as we mentioned, not helping you out a whole lot. So like you can see a little bit more. You can save your money a little bit more. You can automatically heal yourself, which was kind of cool. So lots of like really really neat like augmentations that you can find in this game. There's not much that I would say I'm looking for Metroid to take from Haiku, but this could be one of them. This could be something that gives you like a little diversity in gameplay and how you play.
Yeah, I totally agree here. Like the expansions are so fun to collect, particularly those chip sets. I feel like that's really like kind of what makes everything like really click together. Personally, my favorite one, I always do like the money grinding and saving ones, just so that I
Mm-hmm.
can invest now, earn more later. That's always my strategy with these type of like kind of currency grinding games. So I always like to do that early on.
My one
Yeah.
complaint is I wish that there was more chip slots because you can only have what, two at a time? I think for all of them.
Yeah, I think you can have a max because you can also unlock additional chip slots as well. You
Yeah.
start off with three, but you can unlock an additional one for it. Honestly, I'd go a step further. Honestly, I just wish they were all permanent, and like I wish the game was balanced in a way to like accommodate it so that having them all permanent is like a viable option while still being challenging. That's kind of what my preference would be. I don't like having to like choose one or the
Choose,
other.
yeah.
That's yeah. If Metroid were to adapt it, that's how I would do it. But yeah.
I don't mind the idea of customizing your gameplay a little bit more and like taking what works for your gameplay style. So like that I don't mind, but I felt like because you had two and two and two, and I was like I could use like one more attack mod or I could use one more movement mod or something like that, right? Like so I appreciate the idea. I wish that they went a little bit more, but I would say that being said, this is again probably what I would single out as probably the coolest thing that this game does. I think that it's probably the best thing going on for this game. Even if I pretty much like set my chips and kept them, but just the option to have all those other abilities, I just thought was cool as well. So I really like that from Haiku, and I thought that it was a strong, probably the strongest point actually.
I'd still probably put the disruptors as like my top choice, but this is definitely like right below it, like just barely.
Um,
Definitely like two of the coolest original. I don't know if the chipset's are original idea because Hollow Knight does have the charm system, which is pretty
yeah.
similar as well. But yeah, either way, I think it mostly like knocked it out of the park here.
Well, let's talk just really quickly. We'll touch on it because we skipped over it a little bit here, but just like general gameplay. What were your thoughts? Because I felt a little up and down on this as I was playing. I would say like with everything, eventually, like as it goes on, I think it gets better. But yeah, I don't know. Before I go, Doom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, this is like one of those moments where it's like, I don't think I'd give anything in this game like a 5 out of 5, and I would extend that to the gameplay, obviously, the main part of the game. But
Yeah.
again, there wasn't really a moment where I was just like, "Oh, this sucks. I hate this girl." Like, like at worst, it was just like a 3 out of 5. But then there was like other moments where it would be like a very, very high 4 out of 5 for me. And generally, like, I feel like the combat for the most part, the base combat, not the boss battles. We'll talk about that separately for its own category. The base combat was just kind of there. I feel like, which to be fair, I think a lot of base Metroid combat was there for a while, but especially after the Mercury Steam games and Dread in particular, how just absolutely
Ooh.
refined it was in that game. Like it's very, it definitely sticks out a bit more, in an era with Metroid Dread and games where combat has become more integrated into that main gameplay loop. And so the combat is just kind of there, but I didn't dislike it by any means, but it's just something to keep you busy. It's really kind of I feel like the quote unquote fun of this game is just, kind of navigating that maze, navigating that labyrinth, and getting that light bulb aha moment. That's really where the fun of the gameplay loop comes in.
Yeah, I would. Well, first of all, I would take umbrage with that Metroid comic. I think like I mean even Super Metroid Fusion Zero Mission, I felt like combat, which obviously is the focus, but like I felt it was a lot smoother than this. I thought that like the sword combat
I'd agree.
was
I agree. I'm just saying that it wasn't like as optimized as it's now become in
yeah,
Dread.
definitely. I see what you're saying. Um, Yeah, I felt like the combat. We'll talk about the combat, then we'll talk about the exploration. But like I felt like combat was really clunky for a lot of it, and some of that is by design because there are some of those mod chips that you can get to like keep your character in place rather than like every time that Haiku swings its sword, it gets pushed back a little bit. But I don't know, like I just it reminded me. People are gonna think that this is a compliment, but coming out of my mouth, it's not. But it reminded me of like a Souls game where like you're fighting and like I'm no good at Souls games. Okay, I'm just gonna throw that out there so nobody at me. But like every time I'm playing Elden Ring, every time I'm playing Bloodborne, I feel like my characters just move so like they fight so clumsily and slowly and awkwardly. It's not fluid. It's not fast. And I know that's by design. and I'm pretty sure it's probably by design in this game as well. But I didn't care for it. I felt like there were a bunch of times where I was like just fighting, and my sword is slow, and like I felt like I was just like a step behind, and like I think the actual like enemies themselves, like there comes like a glorious point in Metroidvania where you just get so OP when you go back to a area that you've been to at the beginning. You're just slicing and dicing through everything like they're turkeys on Thanksgiving. But this game, I felt like no matter what, I was still just like getting my ass kicked from a couple different enemies if I chose to fight them. If I didn't, I could just like jump over them and that was fine. But I was like, well, you know what, like I kind of like fighting them. And in this game, you get like rewarded for combat because you get money from it, and you actually need to spend money in order to heal yourself and to buy all these chips. So I was kind of like, well, I want to fight as much as I can, but I didn't like it, you know. Like and that goes for pretty much every scenario in this game, as we'll get to.
Yeah, I think this might be my first disagreement where I don't think the combat was clunky at all for me personally, with exception to the secret final boss before the boss rush. There were some moments where I was definitely still in the invincibility frames of my dash and still getting damaged. That irked me a little bit, but that's really the only instance that I can think of. Everything else felt fair. I felt like everything else felt pretty fluid. I felt like I could get the hang of it.
Yeah, it's not like I didn't think it was unfair. Like I wouldn't say that, but I do think that it could have been just like a lot smoother or a lot. I don't know. Like I said, like I'm referencing it again because I'm playing it right now. But like you look at the combat in like Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, released 20 years ago, and like it's not even close. It's like it's way more fluid, way more precise, way more crisp. This one, I thought that it was just kind of, I don't know, a little bit mushy or a little bit clunky or just didn't quite jive with me, unfortunately.
You know, one thing I will agree with you on is there is no penultimate final upgrade where you can like really tear through enemies.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, obviously your sword will get stronger every time you defeat one of the creators, and you know it takes I think like one hit off what the enemies will regularly take. But you know, there's no like screw attack item where you can literally just like plow into enemies and incorporate that into your movement and just make the traversal that much smoother. There isn't really a moment like that. Even when you're fully powered, if you're engaging enemies, there is a little stop and go there, which I do hope is alleviated in a sequel.
Well, I would say too, like I felt, at least for me, the way that I played, like the pacing of like how you upgraded your health and stuff like that probably also played a big part into that, because like I must have played 4 hours before I got more than like what I started with health wise, which probably means that I was doing something wrong. But like I was just like, Jesus, like when could I like take an extra hit here? Like I feel like I've earned it. But so maybe that was a part of the reason why. But because I want to flip this narrative a little bit, because again I feel like I'm beating up on this game. I thought that in terms of like gameplay as an exploration, man, when you're moving in this game, that's when it really clicks. Like there's a bunch of different like areas where you're platforming, like the fire area comes to mind, or like the in the electrical like factory or whatever, like when you got to dodge your way through all like the lightning and stuff like that, or the sparks. Like when you're moving and you're fluid, that's when I was just like, this is really fun. Like this is a really fun game. And I don't know that those sections come as often as I would like, but when they do, it's just like, man, this is awesome. Particularly at the end, when if you're going for the 100% and you've got the grapple, you can do some like really cool stuff. It's borderline like Shine Spark puzzle material actually when you get that.
Yeah, I was just about to agree with you on that as well. Like I feel like those moments do come a lot, but it's just that the grapple is by far the coolest one, and that's like a very late game item, or at least in my playthrough.
It was for me too.
Yeah. I'm just saying because the game is very non-linear. Maybe there's a way you can collect it earlier. I wouldn't know, but yeah, once you collect that grapple, like, and the way you can incorporate that with your abilities, like there's a couple of really fun puzzles with that, and especially once I realized you can actually double jump out of your grapple. I didn't realize. And once you do that, it's like, like all of a sudden the possibilities just become endless, and it's just, Oh, it's so much fun to do that. But yeah, like I wish there were more. I wish there were more grapple puzzles. Just like in most Metroid games, I wish there were more shine sparking puzzles.
Yeah, me too. I agree with you. So let's talk about these areas. We've touched on the areas a little bit, so we can spend as much or as little time as we want. I felt like when I was playing the game, it seemed like there was like 100 areas. And I'm looking at a map right now, and there's really only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I just felt like there was always like a new area that I was unlocking.
Uh, kind of. I felt like the areas came really quickly for the most part, but also
Maybe
like
that's it, yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't feel like there was like obviously hundreds hyperbolic, obviously, but like I don't know. It felt like I didn't feel like, oh, there's less areas than I thought there was. It felt like,
Hmm.
yeah, this is the amount of areas that I discovered.
Yeah, and to be fair, like that wasn't a criticism; it's just more of an observation. But yeah, like I think like you know the areas as we've talked about, I feel like the art style does hold them back a lot. Like there's no reason why the blazing furnace should have the same color palette as the abandoned wastes, but they do,
Yeah.
unfortunately. There are two exceptions to that I mentioned earlier: the Forgotten Ruins and the Water Ducks. Those ones stuck out to me as being pretty cool. I mean, like you said at the beginning, like I feel like I feel like every area is fine. Like there's not like a stinker in the bunch, I don't think. But I also don't know that there's an area where I was just like, dang, that was awesome. Like, wow, really fun.
Yeah.
Aside from those few moments like we were just talking about where you can like zip line around and like that is fun. I guess like maybe some of the rooms in like the central core, like where you're kind of jumping around, or maybe it's the last bunker. That's the problem right there. Is like the like all the areas are so homogenous that it's like, wait, where was I doing this again? Like, whereas if I think of like, okay, water, I know that I was in the water ducts. So like there are a few moments here and there, and maybe I'll shout out the Sunken Waste too, because it does have some cool, like they have these little bulldozers that you kind of got to get to make a path for you, which I thought was kind of neat. But yeah, like I think I would have liked to see, I don't know, a little bit more personality for each area. As we've mentioned, the art style is a big offender for that, and no points for guessing what the other offender is, as we'll get to in a bit.
Yeah, like I said earlier, 3 out of 5 at its worst, 4 out of 5 at its best. It kind of just rides that fine middle line in between. I will say one thing I do like is some of the sub areas. I feel like that does make some of the areas more memorable. Like the Forgotten Forest, I think we both agree that's probably one of the better areas in the game, one of the more standouts.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my favorite parts of that game is when you discover the secret laboratory, like something that you think would not go great with the forest at all, but that's what makes it a secret laboratory after all. And like moments like that to me are very memorable, and I really like some of the sub areas this game does that kind of goes in a complete 180 from what the regular theming you'd think would be.
Yeah, and you know what? We should also shout out the ruined surface, which I thought was a cool area. There's really not much to
Yeah.
it. It's just basically a big hallway, but you can kind of see like the surface, and it looks like the Matrix when Morpheus was showing Neo what the world looked like
Yeah.
for the first time. It's kind of cool.
I was
So
gonna say
yeah.
revolutions when they're making their way to the final
Oh,
boss,
that
but
yeah, that too. So yeah, like I probably would have went like a little bit lower than you if I was ranking. I would have probably been like a 2 at the worst, a 3, a 3 at the best, maybe a 3.5. But yeah, like I can't say it enough. It's just like that. The art style and it just goes to show how important an art style is to a game, because it really for me just had like such a effect on how I was perceiving all of the different areas. So if you don't care about that, you're gonna love all the areas, because like most of them, I think like gameplay wise, platforming wise, functionality wise, are like fun, like probably very fun. But if you're looking for that little flair, that seasoning on top of like the we'll call it like the gameplay, like the bones of it, and everything else is kind of dressing, right? Like and I just feel like the areas don't have a lot of dressing. The bones are there, the bones are fine, but there's no sizzle on it,
mhm.
which is too bad. All right, let's talk about these bosses. This, my friend, I think we might disagree on this too. I felt like this was a weak point of the game. Thoughts?
I really enjoy the bosses. Again, nothing, no 5 out of 5s in here, but yeah, I thought they were really fun. I will say, and I actually this is a positive for me. The difficulty spike between the three creators and the virus very substantial, but I like that. I was like, okay, I like it. Give me a challenge.
Right.
Let's go. I dig it, and so I thought that was a overall pretty satisfying fight. Again, there's the secret final boss that you take on. I think it's Old Arcadia. I think that's the name of the hidden area. There's a secret final
Something
boss
like that.
before you
Yeah.
unlock. Yeah, that one I thought the fight was okay, but again, there were a couple moments where I was just like, some of the attacks and the animations are like clipping through me and still damaging me, even though I'm in my invincibility animation. That I don't like, but that's
Hmm.
a fairly minor nitpick considering that's just one fight in the whole game. But otherwise, I think, overall the difficulty curve is really nice. The final boss feels like a final boss. Um, I, there isn't like any like puzzle attributes. It's, smack it with your sword kind of. They're very punch out style bosses. You're memorizing attack patterns.
Yeah.
You're looking for an opening. Um, you can risk it and go aggro and risk getting hit, or you can play more conservatively, do one hit at a time, and try to avoid getting hit. And I really enjoy those boss fights. And this game, I do wish there was a little bit more diversity, since that is literally every single boss fight. But I also, again, I like those boss fights, so I don't mind it at the same time.
You pretty much nailed it on the head for me. Every boss fight is the same boss fight, just like a different attack pattern, a different sprite. But it's like you're in one locked room. You've got stuff coming over from all sides. You have to dodge it. You have to hit the boss. That's every boss fight in the game. Like every one. And like it really, like, I thought took away from it, because some of these bosses were like quite fun, or they would be fun. Like I think of and again, I think that the boss fights got better as the game went on, as they probably should. But like I think the electron and the neutron, or the positron, is it positron or proton? I can't remember. Proton.
Proton.
Those boss fights were fun, and the final boss fight was like fun. But like again, like we already have a game where all the areas look the same because of the art style, and now like the game is giving us the same boss fight like over and over and over. Like there's got to be like a dozen bosses plus in this game, and it's like any kind of deviation from the formula would be greatly appreciated here. Because by the time that I got to the boss fights that were actually fun, which was like the final couple ones, I was like, I'm over this. Like this is just the exact same thing. Like I'm bored of dying and having to learn the attack pattern and whatever. I just like, yeah, I thought that it was a really unfortunate design choice, because like there you could do some cool stuff, but I don't know if it's due to the limitations of the way that this game was developed to kind of be like that Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Color style game. But like even in like my, I'm thinking back to like Wario Land on the Game Boy, and I'm like, those boss fights were more diverse and fun than this. So I think that this would have been a case where like I almost think that like less would have been more here. Like if I was making this game, I might have literally just had the three electron, proton, neutron fights, the final boss fight, and that might have been it. Because I also I thought that the boss fights at the beginning of the game were brutal. In that, like, I was just like dying over and over and over again, and I could hear people saying get good, whatever, okay, but I was just like, ugh, like this, I don't know, it just kind of was like, I was like, I'm over this, and I think that that's too bad, because a big part of the Metroidvania pie is like having really cool and engaging boss battles.
Yeah, this might be our one disagreement, but yeah, I overall, again, not a 5 out of 5. There's definitely ways that I would personally go differently, but for what was offered, I enjoyed it for the most part. I will say there's also a lot of optional boss fights in this game as well, and obviously you went for 100%, and so you encountered, a ton of bosses in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. I like again. I always kind of bring this up, and I feel funny when I say it because it sounds like such a dumb thing to say. But like, there's people that like video games to just play a game, like play a good, well engineered video game. And we've been talking a lot about that with Tears of the Kingdom, actually, because like if gameplay is like the sole reason for your enjoyment of a video game, you're gonna like Tears of the Kingdom because there's almost nothing you can't do. And I would say that if you consider yourself that type where it's just like the rest of the rest of the stuff doesn't really matter to you, you're probably gonna like Haiku and the boss fights and the map and stuff like that. But if you're like me, where like to me, like aesthetic, variety, those like other things that go along and season, like I was just talking about, the bones of a really good game and kind of bring them to life. I felt like those were missing to me. And if you're a player that considers yourself, maybe you value those like I do, I think you might have a tough time with the bosses offered, and maybe just this game in general. But let's move on. Let's talk about very quickly. Let's talk about expansions. We touched on them a little bit, but there is a lot of stuff to collect in this game, like all of the chips and stuff like that. There's also these little doodads that are scattered around the map. You can get them, but you don't get anything for completing all of them, other than like the really quick cutscene of a character that you've met twice in the game, and then that's kind of it. So I was kind of like, okay, I guess.
Again, 3 out of 5 at worst, 4 out of 5 at best. I don't really know what else, because we kind of already talked about the puzzles, and I feel like that also kind of like goes hand in hand with the expansion. So I don't really know what else to add here. I will say there isn't really. Again, when I say 4 out of 5 at best, there isn't really a standout puzzle for me. Like when I completed Metroid Dread, like I could instantly like when I was rolling credits, there were instantly like 2 or 3 Shine Spark puzzles that I can look back on and go, oh man, that was gnarly, that was sick. I looked so stylish, flawlessly navigating that. With Haiku, I can think of like general movements I did with the grapple hook. Like, oh yeah, I remember there was electrical barriers that I was hopping around, but I can't remember like a specific puzzle sequence or what a specific reward was at the end of that. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does, and I'm not trying to say like every game should have like a memorable sequence where like you unlock a really like Ori is one of my favorite games ever, and I can't think of like a really memorable expansion, using that term loosely, but like something really cool that you need to do in order to get like an upgrade or a power up. But like that, and so the game doesn't need that necessarily, but like yeah, I just kind of thought like the positive is that there's a lot of like cool collectibles. Like there's the chips, there's those little, I don't know what they were, doodads. But then the negative is I was just kind of like, I want a reward for collecting all the doodads. Like I don't get anything for this. So it was a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. So that's pretty much all I have to add about that. Let's move on to our last subject here, and I think that this was, if it wasn't nailed shut before, this was probably the final nail in Haiku's coffin for me in terms of preventing it from being like a top tier Metroidvania. But I thought that the music stunk in this game.
Oh, I wholeheartedly disagree. Significantly disagree.
I can't remember a single tune from this game.
Oh my lord.
Tell me I'm wrong.
We might disagree with this more than the boss bat. Again, I'm not going to say this is a 5 out of 5 soundtrack. It is not, but like, man, I really enjoyed. I like how the game starts off with this very moody atmosphere, but then as you explore the depths, like there's more percussion and rhythm, and then you see more leitmotifs introduced in that. There's a really cool storyline between the first area you go, and then it extends all the way to the power station, to Pinion's Expanse, into the factory, where you start with this very subtle melody that's incorporated in the main area and the power station. And in Pinion's Expanse, once you activate the power in there, then you get this really cool percussion beat in the background that sounds like the gears that are churning in the background, which is so cool. And then you go to the factory, and then that melody gets taken out, but that percussion, that gear percussion, is still there, and a brand new melody gets put in there. Oh my god, it's so cool. I've never seen anything done like that before in a game. Oh my, I love that.
I'm glad that you did, because I eventually I just turned the music off because I was like, this stinks. Like people that say
Dread.
that, give your head a shake, because that is just insanity. Like honestly, Metroid Dread soundtrack looks like Metroid Prime compared to this. It's so significantly better. So significantly better.
Not.
100%. I don't care how many music degrees you have. I'm laying that down right now. Which again,
absolutely not.
I felt like because the game's music stunk, like it really hurt the areas, which already feel very similar to another because they all look the same and they all have the same boss battles. So it was like the game was like one big area, and like, you know, say what you will about Metroid Dread's soundtrack, but like each area is clearly themed. It's clearly very different. They look different. Like I think that like that's what this game was missing, is just personality to each of its areas, and I guess just to the game as a whole. Because like I thought that like the combination of art style, music, bosses, I thought it really held back a lot of the good ideas and the good things that this game was doing. And there's a bunch of good things that this game is doing, by the way. But I think with like a little bit more tweaking in those three key areas, I think we could have had something really special on our hands. And instead, I think we got like a middle of the road Metroidvania that I'd probably recommend to people if you need a Metroidvania to play and you want to spend $10. But I don't know, it would be my first recommendation either. You know, like I look at Islets, I look at Axiom Verge, I look at like a lot of those other games, and I think I would have a tough time recommending this over a lot of those other titles.
I need to actually beat it for myself, but I would recommend it over Hollow Knight. I'll put that out there right now.
Oh, that's also...
I'm in the minority. I'm in the minority on that one. But I still need to beat Hollow Knight eventually. I want to give that game a second chance. But anyways, that's for a whole other episode.
Yeah.
Overall,
which we'll get to, by the way. People keep asking us when we're doing Hollow Knight. We're gonna do Hollow Knight, but we're kind of waiting for Silk Song because we want them to have a little bit of fusion together. No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, Hollow Knight is guaranteed to happen eventually. We will give that game justice. But yeah, I maybe the music, I feel like this might be the greatest differentiator in like kind of our overall outlooks in the game. Because for you, you're kind of like, yeah, it's fine, it's average. And for me, it's like, yeah, it is, but also everything like when mixed together still gave me a really enjoyable experience. And I was like, man, there's a lot of flaws here, but there's so much stuff that could be improved on that could make a really killer sequel. And for what it's worth, I had a lot of fun with it. And maybe that music is kind of the super glue that holds everything together, and your opinion of that might shape your opinion of the game as a whole. I don't know.
Well, like I guess I'm thinking clearly there's a lot of stuff that could be improved for a sequel, but we're not talking about the sequel. We're talking about the game that we're playing, and I felt wanting from a few different categories. Again, I think it's a perfectly fine Metroidvania. Like it's like you've said multiple times, 2 at worst, 4 at best. But it just like, I think that like there's so many games that exist now that like you kind of got to be a little bit more special in order to really jump out and grab buyers' attention, my attention. You know, like how many Metroidvanias have we covered for the series? And I'm taking a look at all the games right now, and there's one title that we've covered that I would definitively say, yes, I would recommend Haiku over this title 100% every time. No points for guessing which that one was. Shadow Complex. That game was horrible. I hated it. And I certainly don't hate Haiku. I think it's perfectly fine. But is it better? Would I recommend it over Guacamelee? Like, I feel like Guacamelee has a ton of personality. Would I recommend it over like Axiom Verge? No, that's like a spiritual sequel to Super Metroid and does so many things well. Would I recommend it over, like go down the list, and I'm just like, I don't know that I would. Like, I think that, like, even a game like Dead Cells, which I'm not really, like, a roguelite fan, but, like, if you're a roguelite fan, you're going to love that game. And I don't know. I guess part of me is just, like, who is this game, who is it for, maybe? Because, like, like, at least all these other games have, like, a part of it or a portion of it that it really excels at. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing it with Haiku. Clearly I am. But yeah, this one, it was okay. I don't want to beat up on it anymore because I feel like I have, and I'm sounding like I didn't enjoy the game, which isn't true because I did, but I felt like I could have enjoyed it a lot more with like some simple design choices that I don't know why they weren't made. It seems like so, I don't know, obvious to me maybe, but again, who the hell am I? So
You're Andy Spiteri.
I made a map on OmegaMetroid.com before. Yeah.
But yeah, kind of to echo pretty much the same thing that I've been saying at all these categories. There isn't really a moment in this game that I just absolutely despised. Maybe the worst aspect of the game is probably the map design, because again, there's aspects of that are very confusing and can kind of,
Yeah.
if you read too much into it, you'll get incorrect information out of it. And there's some other nitpicks here and there for me, but overall, I really like what the game offered, and especially for because we got it for like $10. For $10, I think this game is so worth it. Like,
15,
are you kidding me?
15 Canadian. No, I mean you're right. It's cheap. It's a cheap game, right? Like, so you're not, if you get it and you're not into it, it's not like it's not like you've lost a lot of either time or money. So it's a safe buy. It's a safe game. Like, it's a very fine Metroidvania. I think that we could do a little bit better than fine, personally. So yeah.
I thought it was pretty good, but nothing amazing, nothing that's going to nothing like that's going to be like, oh man, this is going to live rent free in my head for the nothing like that. But overall, like, in the moment, I'm like, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I want to see more from this studio in the future.
Yeah, so I don't know that I'm necessarily like knocking the door down for a Haiku the Robot 2, but I would like to see another game by this studio and maybe see what they can come up with if they maybe, go in a different direction, try a different art style, try a different setting, stuff like that, cuz like the bones of this game, they're good bones, okay? Like, there's a good game underneath it here. It needed a little bit more seasoning for me, and I just want to be very clear. Not everyone will agree with that, and that's totally fine. This game is going to be perfectly awesome for a bunch of people that maybe, like, you don't need that extra salad dressing, so to speak. But like, for people like me, you might be a little bit wanting. So if what I've kind of talked about sounds like it matters to you, take that for what you will, and if you're more kind of siding with Doom here, then that's awesome, and you should definitely give this game a go, because it's not like I wouldn't recommend it. It's fun in spurts. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, even if I'm maybe a little more positive at the game, at the end of the day, we both agree that it's a good game.
Yep, it is. It's a good game. So. There we go. All right. Any parting thoughts on Haiku the Robot before we get out of here that we haven't already spewed out?
I think we covered pretty much everything to go. I wasn't originally planning to play this game, and I'm glad that I ended up doing that. It was a pleasant surprise for me.
Ironic that Dak is the one who suggested it, and he's taken the week off.
Yeah.
But I guess we can give him a week off every now and then. That's okay. All right.
It's not like we get paid, right?
Well, yeah, that's for damn sure. All right. Well, that being said, we want, if you played this game, let us know what you think about it. Are we completely out to lunch? Are you in agreement? Let us know over on Discord. We'd love to have you. We're always chatting Metroid. We're chatting Metroidvanias. We're chatting whatever over there. So come and hang out with us. You can come hang out with us as well over on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, I think even. We're at Omega Metroid Pod on all of those socials. I'm at Spiteri316. Doom is at Doominal Cross. And, of course, we want you to check out OmegaMetroid.com, where you can get all of your Metroid maps, Metroid walkthroughs, Metroid, whatever, you name it, it's there. There's also the past archive of all of our previous Inspired by Metroids, if you ever want to go check those out. So lots and lots of cool stuff for you to check out over on OmegaMetroid.com. As mentioned at the start of the show, we have a Patreon. So we got the Great Metroid Area Ranking rolling on. I'm recording 2 nights from now, so I have a hankering we might have a new #1 overall area. I'm not sure. So if you want to take your membership or support of Omega Metroid to the next level, check that out. And last but not least, like, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you get your podcast. If you got a Metroid fan in your life, let them know where they can get the world's only weekly Metroid podcast. There is no other people on this planet silly enough to try and make Metroid content every single week. So I don't know what that says about us, but we're there for you, baby. If you got
I don't
that
know
Metroid
how we do
fan.
it.
I don't know. Some days I don't know how we do it either, to be honest. I'm just like in amazement at us. So there we go. That is going to do it for us. We're going to be back here next week. Mapping Metroid returns. And we are finally getting to Samus Returns. So I'm very excited about that. Make sure that you're tuning in. And until then, everybody, take care.